You have in your packet the draft October 14, 2014 planning board minutes. Is there a motion to approve?
Yes.
A second? All right, we'll get to this. You seconded?
Yeah, I'll do that.
Yes, Liz?
Second page, second paragraph, last sentence. She feels the existing facilities can take care of this because they're there, and then scratch is a natural channel, and insert was a reduction of lots from phase 2.
Do you want to do it?
No, you can read my
Did you give it to me? Okay, great, thank you. Okay. I'll take it.
Did everybody get that?
Okay, so there's amended.
A second?
Second.
All those in favor? Anything else from anybody else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you. Next item on our agenda, Robert Kessler, amendment to final of subdivision project on Glendale Avenue. How you doing?
Good, how you guys doing?
Who's gonna take it? You wanna take us through this, Joe, or Kurt?
I'll do it. As everyone will recall, this project has been back on a few occasions, the last of which it was increased as to the number of lots, and a town road was proposed for purposes of ingress and egress and access to the lots. When it went to the town board refused to accept dedication of the road. An action was commenced in Oneida County Supreme Court by Mr. Kessler. And the court, Judge Murad, ruled that the town board could not be compelled to accept dedication of the road. So Mr. Kessler is now coming back suggesting that he would, in its place, create a private road. And as you can see, he's provided a declaration of road restrictions that he would file in the county clerk's office that would establish that this would be, he would hold title to the road until the last lot was sold. He would maintain the road during that period of time. He would do the final paving of the road, and once the last lot had been built on, he would then convey the portion of the road that was in front of each lot to the adjoining property owners. And he's provided that. I just have a couple issues with regard to the document that you've provided. Number one, I think there should be an initial paragraph that would say that you are granting an easement to all people who in the future buy the lots for purposes of ingress and egress over that strip of land.
You're talking about if somebody who buys a property now, I build a home for it, they sell their house?
No,
Okay.
you have to grant them access by and through that easement.
I thought that was spelled out in it.
It's
yeah.
not clearly spelled out. I'd
Okay.
like to work on the language. You also should grant an easement to the utility companies because you put the utilities in.
Yeah.
However, they should have access in the instance they have to
For the
get in
water
there.
and sewer and
So,
electric.
yeah, we
Okay.
can change that up without a lot of difficulty. The only other question I had, and I asked Joe and Rick, paragraph 4 says, upon the sale of the last remaining lot in the subdivision, developer or successors assigned shall final pave the private road by installation of a binder course. I thought that you
It's a finished car. That was, I don't know why they said binder course, because it already has the binder down there.
Yeah, that's what I
So it's
thought.
gonna be a finished top,
Finished,
a top coat.
So,
I don't think that my attorney understood the difference between the two.
Yeah.
But that's
Okay.
what I need, top.
so finish course.
Correct.
Those minor changes I think are fine. The only one question I have is, what if the people, you put the road in, they buy the lots, what if they then say, when you say, okay, now I'm gonna convey the portion in front to you, what if they say no?
Well, this is gonna be something they're gonna sign before they buy it.
Okay,
It's
so you're gonna create, at
Yes,
the
it's
time
gonna
you
be
sign
something
the
they're gonna
deed,
sign when they buy a piece of property, they understand the
fine,
conditions and.
then I have no problem other than tidying up the languages to those two items.
Okay.
Any questions from board members on this? Would there be a motion to approve with the conditions that Herb works out the final language on this agreement, which will be filed in the county clerk's office?
So moved.
Is there a second? Any further discussion on this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed, and one abstention? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hopefully you're
Appreciate
done
it.
with us on this operation.
You guys have been awesome, I gotta say that, you guys have really been awesome, you do a great job, I appreciate it. Great, man.
Who's second this one?
I do.
Brian? Thank you.
Next item on our agenda, final site plan review for proposed 98-unit hotel, Townplace Suites, Middlesettlement Road. Who's gonna kick us off on this one, the developer, or where we at? Chris, might as well come on up here with us. How you doing?
Hi, Kessler.
Did you identify yourself?
Bob Ellison, Lieutenant Engineer.
Maybe you could refresh our recollection as to what we're looking at, and then we can get into the secret review.
Okay, well, we were looking at a 98-room Townplace Suites Hotel on a piece of property off of Middlesettlement Road. It's directly adjacent to where the senior citizens housing is. We were here in the September meeting to get the project started and get everything out to review.
Could you lay that out?
Yes. And when we were at the last meeting, it was requested that we had some color elevations prepared. So those are the front elevation and the rear elevation in color. They did show the landscaping that was along the side of along the sides of the building, front and back. The set of plans that I've got here, I just brought just to have, but this is the same set that was resubmitted to the town engineer when we addressed their comments in their original letter.
Could you put those out too, please?
Sure.
Just so everybody sees what it is.
Okay.
And then maybe we'll just jump into with you, Chris, about what came back
Sure.
under the coordinated review under seeker.
So the main comment was a request for a traffic study.
So,
They've since hired and had a traffic study executed. We reviewed the traffic study. I don't know if anyone has this letter that I gave Dory. I'm guessing everyone has. Okay, the second half of that is the traffic study. Minor comments, things that really don't change the output of the traffic study, but basically the intersection is okay. It's a C level of service, which is very good. A is almost not usually possible because it's so good, and then F being failed, so it's right there in the middle. Minor comments, just things that some numbers that are wrong, but they don't really have much effect on the results. But we'd still like them to at least change it and submit it back to us. But I don't think that's any reason to hold this up. As far as the SWIP is concerned, he addressed many comments from the last one. There's still a few things here. The only real one of significance that I would like to point out is the first one. It really isn't just solely a SWIP issue, it's more of a project issue, and that's the cultural resources. To my knowledge, they don't have a response back from SHPO. That doesn't usually mean it's not.
It's into SHPO. It was sent by the town, sent it into SHPO.
could you refresh what that means?
So, the New York State Parks and Recreation and Historical Preservation Office says, is there anything of historical significance on that property? Not meaning that there's a building there that's historical, but are there artifacts, whatnot? Do you have to go into a more exhaustive study, a phase 2, and actually dig things up? That would be the worst case scenario. My guess is that with everything that was done there with the senior housing in that area is probably okay, especially being that's right next to 840. But we always like to hear that back from the office. Again, if things were to move forward tonight, I would just, ask for a contingency that they provide that letter before the town does sign anything. But the SWIP comments that I have, 2 through 5 are really general, they're just things that are needed in what the full application would be, for the town, for the stormwater pollution prevention plan. So, all in all, pretty minor stuff from my end.
And we do have a revised copy of the traffic study. I believe that was sent to you. I don't know if you actually saw it.
Not as of this, no.
Okay.
It may have been emailed to me, but I didn't get it.
Joe, I was getting that, do you have any comments regarding this?
No, but I'd like Chris to expound on the improvements to the stormwater situation over there as a result of this development.
Yeah, when they first came in, probably the first meeting you were at, we expressed,
Right.
we expected the interest that we'd like to kind of go a little more than the minimum as far as stormwater is concerned. The point being that the site does take on some off-site drainage. And we'd like them to take that into account rather than just route it around their property like is allowed by DEC standards and just make it a further problem downstream. We'd like them to be able to capture that water, store it, treat it, what they need to. They've done that. The reduction, I believe, is in the 25% range.
Yep.
So they're actually reducing, not just meeting the zero increase offsite, they're actually reducing theirs by 25%. So that's a big plus for anyone downstream of this project. So that will hopefully help out that whole area, the flooding that happens in that stream that parallels Liberty Ave. So they've, as far as the plans are set right now, they've done all that for us. That's a good step.
So you feel that's adequately compensated
I
for the
think-
problems of that area?
I don't know if it's compensating the problems in the area, because the problems down there are different than what they're related to on this site. Some of the problems that you're talking about is the culvert going under that road, on Middlesettlement Road. We're actually the other side of that. So, by any means, anyone along Liberty that gets flooded, they're gonna make things essentially a little better. They're taking some water out, but it's such a drop in the bucket compared to some of, the big basin that's upstream of that. But if everyone keeps doing this, yes, that's the trend we'd like to set.
Quick question, did you review any of the responses that came in?
The only one I got was the one that Dory sent me on the county asking for the
Pedestrian.
traffic
This traffic study, but they had questions about the Rainhill Trail and pedestrian. Did you see any of those?
study. There was a comment that was related to the sidewalk.
There were a couple in there.
Yeah,
There's
and I
several.
think, Ellis and myself talked about that, and I'm not sure that you can make someone put a sidewalk on property that they don't own. So that's a kind of a sticky comment. I understand the way they wrote it, it'd be a good thing. But if you may have a sidewalk to nowhere,
Right,
that makes sense, like, especially if the senior housing isn't doing it,
right.
and the neighbor up at the road's not doing it, because they don't necessarily front Middlesettlement Road for a certain portion of that.
Right.
So it's just, that's a tricky one. And it was a should, not a shall, the way they wrote it, so,
Yeah, it's a comment, it's not a requirement.
so no, they didn't provide anything like that at this point. I don't know if you.
No,
requested
and
by any
that
means.
was, you basically made our comment that our client has an easement agreement with the senior housing's property to connect to the driveway and to put utilities. I mean, they don't own the property that goes out to Middlesettlement Road where the sidewalk would go.
Who's the adjacent property owner to the south?
The New York State DOT.
Well, there is a possibility of a connection directly to the trail there, which would eliminate the need for a sidewalk along Middlesettlement Road, because there's really not enough room where the poles are that hold the signs, so they check that out. But it looks like the grade, it is feasible, and that was, I think, one of DOT's comments also was for connection. So they would just have to provide it to their property line if, DOT or the town would decide to connect to the Rainhill Trail.
There's a pretty steep bank right here.
Over here?
Yes,
This
the
way?
whole
Okay,
thing.
because even with, do you have the building footprint for the other building? Because it's not that bad up in this area.
Chris, and I don't know if you know the answer to this question. The big picture for the Ray Hill Trail, didn't include anything in this
No,
packet?
next page.
It was
I don't
supposed to
know.
go all the way down.
I know,
And you may not know.
well, I know that it is going further, there's more to it right now, but I don't know about this particular area. I know that we are
It's
working
not
with
in
Rick
this
on,
area, it's
yeah.
toward New York Mills.
I was gonna say, I know that we're working with Rick on some stuff from New York Mills, but it seems to be kind of a little bit of a gap, because we got that, consumer square and everything down there.
I guess my only comment along this section is it's isolated. I don't feel it would be safe to be putting a sidewalk down there, and it's likely to be the trail side, the sidewalk for the trail is right here. It's likely to be confusing, which is which. We could be sending people onto the
Signage, I really.
hotel
think that
property.
That's a problem at all. You
But
put a
it's,
sign there that this goes to the hotel, there's other spurs off the trail that pedestrians seem to know how to use.
but, you know, that's also a lot of sidewalk for a hotel, and when everything was planned during the previous development of this property, and the decisions were made that the next property was gonna share the driveway, nothing was addressed as far as sidewalk, so I guess from our standpoint, we see maintenance issues, ownership issues with the place that would make sense if you were gonna do anything, going up, connecting up the bank,
Yeah,
there's,
they've been
that's not
safety
feasible
issue.
there.
But there's an abandoned, flat graded roadway, but unfortunately it's not on their property. I was hoping that the grade was a little bit lower adjacent to it, because we can hook up there, because it is problematic crossing the road. Even if the pedestrians came there, they would need a sidewalk to the crossing, which is at the 840 off-ramp.
And people, I've seen people park across the street to get on Ray Hill, although they can do it up at Bosse's and that other area. So, I don't know.
It's a sidewalk to no place.
Well, I was thinking more like the trail, you know, like having.
Anybody have anything else besides the sidewalk?
Got a couple. You said the traffic study was redone, and I took a quick look at this. Used the ITE standards, and I believe it was 57, 59 trips during peak. Did you adjust it for the 98 rooms that you expect?
The traffic engineer is here, I can let him address any comments with that.
Tim Faulkner with CHA. What was your question again?
The traffic study used the ITE standard?
Yes.
How does that relate to the 98 room occupancy? Because originally, the original report said use the ITE standard, Institute of Traffic Engineer standard, for trip generations.
Right.
And it said you didn't know the number of rooms that the hotel was gonna have at the time. Now we know what the number's gonna be. How does that compare?
We did the trip generation for a 98-room hotel.
Okay.
So that's what the whole basis of the report is based on.
And it still maintains the level of service of C?
Yes. During the PM peak hour, I think during the AM peak hour, it's level service B.
So it is B.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's
In the morning.
typically B and C.
Yeah.
Okay. The other question that I had related to the stormwater, and this was really a stormwater conservation district concern, was the soils that were referenced in the report, and the engineering for the SWIP stated that the soils were well drained. It was pointed out by United Richmond Soil and Water Conservation District that they're actually poor drained soils. Was that addressed someplace or in a report someplace with a SWIP? Did they look at the antecedent moisture conditions differently, or?
The stormwater design
Did you see that?
took into account the types of soils that were present on the site, yes.
So then why was that incorrect originally? And are we sure they're using the right numbers for the calculations now, Chris? Did you check that?
I don't look at the numbers versus soil conservation service or the percentages of overland flow and the types of flow for that, so. Assume that it's done with TR 55.
It was all done with the TR 55. It was all done using the curve numbers and everything, based on the types of soils that were there. We did do infiltration testing on the site. The soil had good infiltration. I think that may be why it was noted the way it was on the original form, because the soils did have infiltration. We do have separation to groundwater. That was one of the comments in the letter that was issued on Friday.
Yeah.
We've got a minimum of 4 feet separation to groundwater for the lowest bioretention basins. Some of them are gonna have a lot more than the 4 feet.
Chris, did you take a look at that when you were reviewing?
I'm not seeing anything that we said that the classification was wrong, but we do make a comment to the soil types. And as you pointed out, it's related to the 2-foot minimal separation. But we didn't make a comment that it was moderately well drained versus well drained.
Yeah, you didn't, I heard her, soil water conservation.
No, I see it, and I'm looking at that right now, so I can't speak to that personally, if it changes the calculation or not.
So you didn't see it?
The calculations were done based on the curve numbers were selected based on the soil types that were on that were present on the site, yes. The other comment was related to just checking a box on the seeker form. But the actual calculations were done based on what's actually there.
I guess I have a general question that isn't for you, Chris, or you, but Dory, what happens here when these come in, and maybe it's really for you, Ellis, when these come in and the engineer on behalf of the town is gonna take a look at the project, does he not normally get these letters that he can then encompass in his review?
If they have a comment that needs addressing, yes. Sometimes the comments,
There are none.
Well, like the police department, for example, always
Right.
sends it in, they have no comment.
So he wouldn't have gotten this one
Right.
because it was deemed it was not.
Well, I don't know, but I'm saying a lot of the routine ones he probably doesn't get. The fire department says they've got.
Yeah, I would, yeah, right.
Because- Yeah. Dory's answer is yes.
Yes, Chris did get them.
So if I did not personally see it, but.
Okay, so in your
I mean,
office
if
then, it was forwarded to you.
That's what it sounds like.
Okay.
But if it was a calculation for that soil, I would think the SWIP would be correct. If it was the nomenclature of well drained versus not well drained in the statement, I don't really think that holds much as far as it working or not working.
When you evaluated the site soil conditions, how did you, and again, I have to ask a question. How did you evaluate it? Did you do a test bed, did you do an excavation, did you use the SES methods, did you say what's on site?
Infiltration testing in accordance with the stormwater design manual.
Okay. How many is that per site, per the site area that we're discussing, talking about?
There were a few of them up over the site, in the different areas where the practices are.
Any other questions?
I just want to go back to my one initial question because maybe somebody provided the answer and I didn't understand it. And maybe, I don't know who the right person is to address it to. As it relates to the Ray Hill Trail, I know it's been done in phases. Was the concept of the Ray Hill Trail, did it ever include this site? And what these two different agencies, they recommended, that doesn't mean that was part of the plan. I get that. I'm just trying to ascertain, was that part of the initial concept of the Ray Hill Trail?
I wasn't here when the
It
initial
was supposed to connect.
trail was proposed. There was an extension that was gonna go to the city of Utica. We're not doing that. Rather, we're turning and going to New York Mills. Joe, was there anything out here other than?
Joe, wasn't there supposed to be something that went down
Rick,
through that
anything?
area?
No, the trail's where the trail is supposed to go.
Right.
But the trail does connect. I mean, it connects across Middlesettlement
Yes.
Road. Is it goes along 840 and then it connects over, has the sidewalk, and it goes to the new piece. And looking at the elevations, you need a bridge, but the same elevation is 534, and there's 534, I mean, there's a swale.
The other way, it goes up and then down.
It goes up and then down?
Yes.
I didn't see any top elevation. Okay, 534, okay.
So it goes through there.
There's a hill up and over. Yeah, it ends up being about the same elevation on the trail as it is in the parking lot.
I guess now I'm even more confused, I'm not a big walker, so.
Well, it's unfortunate that there are a number of people that will not have a good pedestrian connection, and I think we really missed the boat when we approved the housing without putting a sidewalk out to connect to the trail system, especially now if there's, and I don't wanna use able-bodied, but, you know, people at hotels often look to walk or jog or run, and the best place for the folks staying there is to get on the trail system, which they don't have a sidewalk to cross Middlesettlement Road to get on the trail system. And that was unfortunate that we didn't have some kind of pedestrian connection from there.
Yeah, because that could be, that at times is busy traffic.
Well, there's,
Really?
there is a pedestrian crossing at the 840 light,
I know.
but there's no sidewalk in front, you know, fronting Middlesettlement Road, and the way that the poles are, the signals, it's really difficult to fit one in that corner, a sidewalk that, I mean, they're prohibitive to move the poles cost-wise.
Any other comments or concerns?
Chris, this was addressed, I don't know if Julie's asked this earlier, the DPW comment, the clarification for the 61 vehicle trips generated in PM peak,
Yeah,
that was clarified, okay, and also,
that's what he's saying, that is in the revised.
all right, that's what I was wondering, also the same thing using Brighton Ave in Syracuse is,
I haven't seen it yet, but yeah, he's saying that.
It's in there.
It was taken care of.
It was just a location map that
Yep.
was
okay.
probably wrong.
Any other comments or concerns?
Yes, I have another one. So the reason that we asked for the planting plan, or the screening plan, the elevation that's in color, was to take a look at what it would look like from the property. And those are very low plantings, and I was just wondering if the other members of the planning board feel that they should put in some taller plantings to screen the building. These look like to be little shrubs. You know what, Andy, what type these are?
Not off the top of my head, it's on the- I mean, they were low shrubs. We are, you know, trying to screen a 4-story building. We could quadruple the size of them, and they're still gonna be low shrubs. You're still gonna see the building.
Understood, but if you put trees in, and for those that are walking on the site of affordable family housing or parking there, and if they're 10-foot tall evergreen hedge, they're not gonna see the building, looking at the building. I mean, at least helps the people on the ground floor or those walking there.
I have a facility. I think it's one of our really,
So I guess there's no response, I guess.
I,
You were here when we talked about
right,
it, so I
right.
think.
So, I mean, we took what was on the plan and we
Yeah, that's what we
showed
asked
it
to
in
see.
elevation.
Right.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, I guess if there's,
and they're just gonna be looking at each other.
right,
Yeah,
Well, they're not, I mean, they are light properties.
I understand
I
this.
continue to be baffled by this. I was the first go-around, and I remain this go-around. This is, the other site is, one whole side of it is looking directly on 840. The end, on one end, is looking over the roofs of Commercial Drive. You know, to expect this developer, they want their property to look good with some kind of plantings, but to think you're gonna, this, for some reason, needs to be hidden from view, I fail to understand it, I really do.
I mean, I think that views could be mitigated. I live in a village and my house is very close to my neighbors. My living room window looks at their house. They trim the trees and, actually my trees, and now I could see their house instead of looking into a pine branches. And it was nicer looking at the pine than looking at their siding. So, I mean, it can be mitigated somewhat, and well, I could make a motion, but I'm gonna recommend that some taller plantings, evergreen hedges. So I guess I can do that. I move to, let's see, final site plan with, can I do
If
that?
we're ready to get to
Oh, I'm
that
sorry,
point,
I'm sorry, Alice.
we have to close seeker. That would be our first motion. Then if you wanna talk about what you wanna do on the site, then we can talk about that. So there's a motion to close seeker. Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion on that? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Is there, what's your motion, Liz?
Motion to approve with a change. Approve the final site plan for Townplace Suites with a change to, have evergreen screening at least 6 feet high in place of the low shrubs on the east elevation.
Is there a second to that motion?
Where, Liz?
East elevation on the back, well, I don't know
Oh,
what
sorry,
it's between the property and affordable, or the senior housing.
That was a second, Peg?
Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion regarding this? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are we not in favor because of the height of the shrubs, or do we have other issues that I'm missing here?
My issue is the Ray Hill Trail. The town is still building the Ray Hill Trail. They've received state and federal monies for a big concept to build the trail. And it's almost, and this is my perspective, I'm sitting here, I still don't have a clear view as to should that or should that not be included. I don't have the skill set. There's nobody here that seems to be able to have that skill, be able to provide that information. And so even though I think it's a great project for this community, it's a needed project for this community, I don't feel comfortable in voting for something without having the answer to that question.
I guess I get confused on that because this developer isn't responsible for the Ray Hill Trail, where the town's at on the Ray Hill Trail, connecting to the Ray Hill Trail, where this developer cannot. I mean, it's not to mention the fact that it's off-site seeker-related issues, which we cover in the GIS, which I scream about. So anyways, that motion failed. Is there a second motion? Or any other motion?
I'll make the same motion that Liz made, eliminating the condition on the shrubs.
Is there a second to that motion?
So that's a motion to grant final site
Approve.
plan approval as shown.
As shown.
Thanks, sir.
Sorry.
Thank you.
No, that's good.
Well, I just want the record clear.
Yes. Thank you, that's why thank you. Is there a second for that motion?
Yes.
Is there any further discussion regarding this? All those in favor?
One further discussion. When we look at the setting, and again, we asked to look at the screening, and I believe that's one of the stickers. When we asked to look for this, at the screening, and they provided that screening to us, a big thing is, and my concern was the overall makeup and the way it looked, just, and I'll say, looking at some other developments that are going on in communities around our area. With this, specifying height is a very difficult type task. They did provide, what we requested of them to take a look at that. It is adjacent to a like-type facility, and this is a permitted use. And that's the only thing I'd like to add on this, when doing that. And with the trail as a private trail, I don't think we have a right to force them on connecting to the private trail.
I don't disagree with you, But every time, it just seems like project after project, when we have these bigger picture questions, and this is my perspective, we don't seem to have all the information. And I'm not saying that
Well,
that's anybody's.
what information?
Well,
You
I'm
asked
trying-
me, did the Ray Hill Trail go? It doesn't go there. Is that, you asked if it was planned for the Ray Hill Trail to have a spur or whatever in this area. Joe's very familiar, Rick's very familiar, it wasn't planned.
But it's supposed
And as I
to
ex-
connect.
Right, but I mean, as planning board members, I think we can require developers to go above and beyond minimums,
Oh,
whether it's
if you're
street or-
talking about, can you have him connect to whatever's there, that's a
Yes.
different story.
Right, I agree.
That's a totally different
And-
story.
And like I said, I wish that on the affordable senior housing, we did have a sidewalk out, because then we can make their sidewalk connect to that sidewalk, but this is a little bit frustrating because we can only make them do what's on their property.
Right.
The time, I think, was when the road went in,
The
the original road went in.
I'm calling the motion. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Thank you. Thank you very much.
Peg and Liz only? Or is it other two?
Next item on our agenda is preliminary site plan review for Phoenician Restaurant. All right,
It's the property next door.
you know what to put down.
Unless you feel you can't be here in person.
We do have to bring in another lawyer though. How you doing? Good. All right.
See what you can do. There's no possible way to do it.
You can tell he never had a roadmap.
I know. He never got lost. He's too young for that. He had GPS the whole time.
Okay, everybody, let's get back to this meeting. How you doing?
Good, how you doing?
Could you please identify yourself?
Yep, sure. Good evening, my name is Zach Comstock. I'm with C. Lewis Thomas LA Architects, landscape architect there. Mr. Karam is here, owns the Phoenician, which is located right here. He also owns the two adjacent properties right next door to me. The property that we're looking to get preliminary site plan approval is 625 French Road, which is this location. Just to get you a little familiar, I'm sure you're very familiar with Burstone Road's up here, this is French Road going down, and Home Depot's down here a little bit. The property currently is zoned C2 commercial retail. Mr. Karam is looking to convert it from a residential house, which it is currently with attached garage, into an office use. Just a few things on the site plan. It's a fairly small parcel, property lines here, out on French Road on the back. It's about 0.25 acres. Currently, there's the existing house in the garage. There's parking that's actually already there. What we've done with the proposed site plan is just reconfigure and restripe, just to make it a little more efficient and cut back on the amount of pavement. Currently now, most people enter off of French Road, come around here and actually exit off the exit here. There's parking behind the building currently now, which I believe the amount of parking we need for it is about 6 parking spaces. But what we're looking to do is keep the number of spaces he has, because when he's fairly busy at the restaurant, you know, there's a fair number of cars there. So, and most of these all these parking lots are existing. Like I said, we're just going to reconfigure it. There's some existing parking along here. We're proposing just to restripe it 45-degree angle, a different direction, so people can come around parking here, pull out, and then go out onto French Road. The main changes we're looking to do to convert it, he doesn't have a tenant at the moment, so there's no signage proposed. I would imagine whoever
Does signage come to us, Joe?
No, I have to come back. No?
That goes to you?
Yes.
So that goes to the closeout.
Okay, so we're all set there. The major changes, we just have to make it ADA accessible. We would have an ADA parking spot over here on the side here, and then we build a ramp up to get in the front door. Like I said, he would be converting the garage. There's enough square footage between the garage and the house that we still have enough parking spaces on site. Joe, when we had looked at this previously, had asked us to come up with an easement, because these are two separate parcels, and Mr. Campbell would like to keep it that way. Is that there'd be an easement for the parking, so that we could keep the parking the way it is. We've reconfigured everything slightly to kind of get the minimum setbacks for the parking. The only place we can't get that obviously is between the two parcels. The existing driveway we're talking about keeping, just for the tenant's use, whoever ends up renting the place or leasing the place for the office. The only other thing I'll mention quickly is we would actually get rid of the garage door. I submitted a front elevation, which I can pass around. We would just be removing the garage door, putting a window in that's similar to the window that's already out on the porch. All the lighting is basically going to stay the same on the site. I guess I'll just turn it over to any other questions.
Yeah, Joe, do you have any comments regarding this?
No.
You guys can see this?
You're making no exterior changes other than the ramp. You're converting the garage.
Correct.
You're not putting up any additional structures. You're not expanding the footprint.
Nope.
Are you creating any additional impervious area?
We're actually reducing it slightly.
You're reducing it.
And the parking and everything, Joe's all right?
How many spaces will there be there?
There's actually, I believe it's 20, there's 30, and then there's 12 actually on, or 13, excuse me, on this property.
13 on that?
So there's 43 parking spaces, which is basically what's there now. We just reconfigured them to get them more efficient so we get a little more green areas and make it meet the parking standards for the town.
How's stormwater runoff affected, if at all?
Basically, we're not changing any of the grades. If you remember, I don't know if you remember previously, but everything kind of drains from this corner to this front corner up here. There's actually existing drainage along French Road, and there's also some, I believe there's a catch basin on Mr. Karam's property over by the restaurant. So everything kind of drains that way, it always has, and will continue to be that way.
You have an existing driveway on the one side. Can you get to the parking in the back?
Which,
No, that was the garage for,
Yeah, that's the
no,
driveway.
we're leaving this driveway that doesn't go to the back. We're not planning on going to the back.
So the parking has to be accessed over the
Yeah, the
other
parking would
parcel.
be accessed over here.
So you're gonna need an easement for purposes of ingress and egress as well.
Yes, which I believe is part of what the.
Yeah, Mr. Khalil provided me with an easement.
He did it a while ago. I hadn't looked at it recently. But he used-
Except I thought they called it a temporary
Yeah,
easement.
that was one of my questions, or it is,
Yeah.
it's called
It's called a
temporary.
temporary, it should be a permanent easement for ingress and egress across the Phoenician parcel. Otherwise, they're not gonna have access with that small.
Yeah,
I think what he was getting at is, I believe Mr. Karam wanted it just to go with during his ownership of the property.
Well, it's gonna have to run with the
Run with-
land.
with
It's gotta
land.
be a permanent easement.
Okay.
any, yes, Chris?
As far as traffic flow and parking, Joe and I had talked, and we were gonna take a look at the standards for the parking lot and just make sure everything complies, you know, from the town's end. That can happen between now and the next meeting.
Yeah, when Joe had his initial comments to me, I went back, went through the code, make sure all the permit met it, so, yeah.
But, you know, Joe not being the traffic guru that he wants to be, I said that we should probably look at that, just look at just the general standards for parking. I know there is some flow, there's a lot of traffic on that site.
Yep.
You know, so if there's any recommendations that we can make on it.
And I know we submitted some additional copies, because I think we usually send it out to the county planning office for comments. And
But Chris, based on the size, seeker, it's a quarter of an acre, and there's no change to impervious area or anything.
From a SWIP point of view, right.
Well, this would be an on-site secret issue, is that what you're saying, Chris?
I think so, because it's a park, it has to do with the parking, that's the traffic flow and the parking is what
So then we say-
Joe and I have talked about.
Any questions from anybody else?
I have a few questions. One, the temporary easement mentions a plastic greenhouse and it references.
It's up.
Yeah, I know, but the easement still references it. I couldn't find it on the site.
Yeah, I believe,
So you can't measure to it if it's not there.
yeah, correct. When he did, I'll have him correct that. When he did that, it was probably 2 years ago or before the board last. And originally he did have a plastic greenhouse that actually would be removed, that actually is removed, I believe.
Yeah, it's not supposed.
That's gone,
You're
right?
correct, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was.
Yeah.
My other comment.
I didn't even realize that was in there.
Yeah, it's in there as the
Okay.
easement document. My other comment is, since you're making that one way, there's no signage at the entrance, which would be, I guess, the south end of that, that says that it's do not enter, exit only, similar to what like Simeon's has or something, because people can go either way, and that's just meant to be a one-way. So that definitely needs some clear signage.
I didn't think about that.
Oh, yeah, because
That's a
you're
good
driving
point,
in
yeah.
around the site, it needs, yeah, like I said, like Simeon's has.
Yeah, I know where there is. Give it up there.
They're not turned like that. So right now you can walk in there, or you can drive in there both ways, because they're not turned yet, but eventually they'll be turned.
The parking spaces are already there.
Yeah, the asphalt's there, there is
That's right.
parking spaces, I believe they're turned the other way, so
Correct.
to get the flow to work and make everything work.
Otherwise, we're doing
I flipped them around to get everything to work, so.
Yeah.
No, that's a good point with the signage.
Yeah, clear sign, both, on both, but we're only looking at the one, which.
So directional.
You want directional
Directional.
signage.
Yeah, basically, on
Signage.
the one that we're reviewing, it should say, do not enter, exit only,
And the other one should have an
entrance, yeah.
I'm guessing our guys will probably say arrows on the pavement
Yeah.
and stuff like that too,
Yeah.
and that's the little stuff I think that
Yeah,
we'll
that's,
probably be looking at.
Oh, it's mostly cosmetic, but it's certainly,
Anything else?
no,
Do we, are we calling this a secret review or just a?
I didn't think we had. You think we have?
No,
There's no
I
significant
wasn't referring to that we had to. no.
Yeah, there's no
Just for site.
significant environmental effects. Yeah, we don't have to. Again, preliminary.
Well, I know we can do the preliminary, and then if
Set
we do this
final.
review, then.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there a motion to grant preliminary site plan review with all the comments that have been made, they come in on a final and confirm the signage is square, and then Chris can take a look at his traffic
so like,
Second, any further comments or concerns? All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Good night.